Lance Armstrong was the centerpiece of one of the biggest sports scandals sports has ever seen. The cyclist perfected the art of doping, all behind closed doors. He was the most famous cyclist of all time. He was inspirational and founded a cancer organization. I'm credible to give this speech because I researched Lance Armstrong's life using reliable sources and have spent a considerable amount of time compiling my research in order to give the best speech possible. In my informative speech, I will sum up the career of the widely known cyclist, Lance Armstrong, his critical battle with cancer, and infamous doping scandal. Lance Armstrong began his career with triathlons, where he found his skill in cycling and pursued it. Through hard work and dedication, he became an up-and-coming prospect. Ronald M. Green explains Lance's gifts that gave him the edge over his competitors in his book, Babies by Design, The Ethics of Genetic Choice. Armstrong's heart is almost a third larger than the average man's. His heart beats about 32 times a minute, slow enough to cause a doctor who knew nothing about him to call an ambulance. Although known for his scandal, Lance did not start his career doping. He had many successes before he began on the path of doping, including winning one leg of the Tour de France completely clean. The article, I'd have been Tour de France champion even without doping, says Armstrong, written by Joe Robinson, includes a quote from Armstrong about his introduction to doping. I knew there were going to be knives at this fight, not just fists. I knew there would be knives. I had knives. And then one day people started showing up with guns. Do I either fly back to Plano, Texas and not know what I'm going to do, or do I walk over to the gun store? He walked over to the gun store, and that is how his journey to doping began. He was not the first to dope. He just doped to even the playing field with his competitors. Just as Lance's career took off, he had a visit to the doctor where he discovered he was diagnosed with stage 4 testicular cancer. The chapter of Nye and Ayden's book, Heart of Lions, The History of American Bicycle Racing, titled Liars Club, sums up Lance Armstrong's rise to stardom. Lance finally ignored his symptoms, including vomiting, blood, severe headaches, and blurry vision. Upon going to the doctor, he was diagnosed with stage 4 testicular cancer. He was only given a 20% chance to survive. Lance battled with the same heart and determination he used to win his races. Lance found himself in the spotlight once again. It was as if the whole world was rooting for him during his battle with cancer. During the battle, Lance was being honored at the Corbel Night of Champions. Armstrong stood on the middle of the stage. What do you think? He asked, pointing a finger to the beret on his head. He paused a couple of beats before taking it off, or without. This quote comes just after Lance recovered from brain surgery, leaving a signature U-shaped scar on his head. This support from the Corbel Night of Champions showed just how beloved he was to his fans. Alas, Lance triumphed and beat the cancer. This close call in his career did not steer the athlete away from doping. Many people speculated that Lance had been doping. He was ratted out by several of his teammates who went public with the accusations. The article, Thou Shall Not Cheat, by Mark Kierden, showcases the man who had a large part in bringing down Armstrong's throne of lies. Travis Tigart is the man highlighted in this article. He worked as the United States Anti-Doping Agency's legal director. Travis's first run-in with Lance Armstrong came after a new rule was introduced. A month after Tigard started his job at USADA, Armstrong called to complain about his rule. "This is bullshit," Armstrong yelled to Tigard. "Showing up at my house to do a drug test, that is not fair and that is not right." The apprehensiveness from Lance Armstrong sparked Tigard's suspicion and made him work even harder to destroy his throne of lies. Lance Armstrong kept true to who he was, despite overwhelming evidence, until one night when Lance Armstrong appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show and finally gave the truth to millions of people watching. Lee Drummond highlights the disappointment in his book, Heading for the Scene of the Crash, The Cultural Analysis of America. Lance Armstrong's betrayal of the public trust was especially painful because he was the ultimate underdog, hero image we Americans somehow managed to embrace while riding roughshod over the rest of the world. Lance Armstrong had the most streamlined and efficient doping procedure the cycling world had ever seen. He cheated in all 7 of his Tour de France victories, which were later stripped from him. It's a good point to note that these Tour de France victories couldn't be given to any of his competitors because they were also speculated of doping. Lance Armstrong touched. Frank Zeus explains how many lives Lance Armstrong touched through his heroic career in his book, Unpleasantries, Considerations of Difficult Questions. There are still people wearing the yellow rubber band bracelet of Armstrong's Livestrong Foundation. We do need our heroes. With all the titles gone, Lance Armstrong did leave behind his cancer organization to fight the war with cancer. Lance was the centerpiece of this giant scandal that was the biggest scandal that sports has ever seen. He inspired a lot of people and inspired many people to fight their battle with cancer. Throughout my informative speech, I have summed up the career of Lance Armstrong, who is the most widely known cyclist, his critical battle with cancer, and his infamous doping scandal. I hope you have learned about Lance Armstrong, and I hope you are inspired to someday win Tour de France as well.